We had some crazy going on in the world today, people. Louisiana, the fine state of Louisiana. Here we go. They're really pulling out all the stops here. Look at this. Louisiana classrooms now required by law to display the 10 Commandments. This happened today. They passed this law today. Of course, the ACLU has already filed suit because this is a clear violation, a huge violation of the First Amendment. Now, it's really important. I think we should look at some of these tweets. Louisiana placed 50th in crime and corrections, 47th in education, 46th in healthcare, 49th in their economy, 41st in fiscal stability, 49th in infrastructure. But what did they do? They want to put the 10 Commandments in schools. Dude, that is some big brain thinking, people. That is some big brain thinking. Dude, what are they doing, bro? Louisiana has lost the plot, boss. Republican Governor Jeff Landry signed the requirement into law today. Louisiana public schools are now required to display the 10 Commandments in all classrooms. They approved the bill last month. It mandates that a poster-sized display of the 10 Commandments with a large, easily readable font be in every classroom at schools that receive state funding from kindergarten through the university level. The legislation specifies the exact language that must be printed on the classroom displays and outlines that the text of the 10 Commandments must be the central focus of the poster or framed document. Before signing it, the governor said it was one of his favorites. If you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original law given, which was Moses, his commandments. He got his commandments from God, Landry said. Now, this is super problematic, of course, in a number of ways. I mean, obviously, it's a huge First Amendment violation, which is funny because there's all this fighting over amendments, and the Second Amendment is this huge deal. But apparently the First Amendment, they don't care about it anymore in Louisiana. The ACLU instantly filed suit. They're suing Louisiana for requiring all public schools to display the 10 Commandments in every classroom. And they're going to fight to stop this unconstitutional law. It's really weird, right? I mean, I guess it's not weird because obviously we know what they want. We know what these Christian right-wingers want. They want everybody to have to live under the scriptures or their rules or whatever their commandments and blah-de-blah-de-blah. And that's it. They want to be able to call certain lifestyles an abomination, and they want to outlaw them. They want to eradicate transgender people. They want to stop social advancement. They want to go back to the days of where you either worship Christ or you go to jail. And they're getting more and more clear with it. They're getting more and more brazen.
I think that we have to get over this fantasy of neutrality in institutions and schools. You either impose a Christian value or that vacuum is going to be filled by something else, by somebody else's values.
Here's the problem. If you look at the First Amendment, it says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right to peaceably assemble and petition the government for a redress of grievances. It's very simple. No law respecting an establishment of religion. That's it. If you are requiring the 10 Commandments to be in every classroom, requiring it, that's establishing Christianity as a dominant religion by the state, a state-mandated exposure to a religion. That's huge First Amendment violation. Here's the text. The text is the 10 Commandments. I am the Lord thy God. All right. So not only is it the 10 Commandments, they're actually proclaiming that the Lord is your God. So this is definitely establishing the religion. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Shall not make to thyself any graven images. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. But what if he's not my God? Then I can do it. God. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. Jesus, dude, that's a mouthful. Why'd they add all that other on there, bro? Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. Thou shalt not put this on the wall of thy public buildings. Now, it's really interesting because, of course, people come in here with this whole pride flags thing. We got to discuss this because I'm not sure where the Bible and pride flags, how they got propped up as though they are on opposing teams. Because one, the Bible is a written religious text that outlines a lifestyle and claims ownership of the creator of the universe. And it's this whole moral code and all these parables and whatnot. But first off, the Bible is unproven. It's a story. It's a selection of stories culled from 1,000 years of oral storytelling passed down from generation to generation and then put down into word over another 1,000 years. And then ultimately organized and packaged in hundreds of varieties, if not thousands. The King James, the new whatever, blah, blah, blah. But there's no quantitative base in reality. Nothing in that book is provable. Nobody has spoken to the people who've written it or even verified that many of these people existed. Certainly there's no verification that anybody who is mentioned in that book was proven to be divine. Now, also, it's a governing thing. The Bible is saying, hey, we're above the law because we're partners with the creator, the God, right? Okay, now, so that's a religion. And there are like 4,000 religions out there. There's a couple major ones: Judaism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism. There's Buddhism, which I guess isn't really a religion. It's more a philosophy, but it's a major, philosophical, religious type vein. So there's lots of different religions that all have their holy book. Mormonism, right? Now, first off, the pride flag is attached to no ethos. There's no code of conduct. There's no religion. There's no book written with any rules. There's no morality rules. The pride flag is just a symbol of being nice and accepting to gay people. And the pride flag is a flag that celebrates their fight to have rights, to be able to get married, to be able to appear out in public without getting beaten up. So they're not even one and the same. So to me, it's really intriguing that every person who's about the 10 Commandments wants to somehow make the pride flag their foil. But the pride flag has nothing to do with your Bible. Nothing. It has nothing to do with Christianity. But it's really interesting because the way religion, I believe they've been sort of like trying to claim that LGBTQ rights are some type of ideology in order to buttress up their whole idea of trying to get back into schools. I think they're creating this false opponent, really, because they have nothing to do with one another. And in fact, if you look at Jesus, Jesus would not be demonizing LGBTQ people. He'd be telling them that they're valid and worthwhile and, children of God. You know what I'm saying? He'd be listening to them and talking to them and trying to understand them. And of course, the word homosexuality never appeared in the Bible because it didn't even exist until the 1800s. There was no, the Aramaic and the old languages of the Bible, there was no term for homosexuality. That term didn't exist. It was a non-issue back then. Everybody had sex across different lines of gender. Nobody cared. Nobody cared. It was only when Christianity became dominant that certain ways of being started being forced. That's what modern religion did, was it became a power to then force society to behave and participate in society in certain ways. And now here I want to look into this because this guy said, what exactly do you hate about the 10 Commandments? And he said, a civilized country So this person, they're trying to claim, and many religious people do, that exposure to the 10 Commandments will create a civilized country. But now let's look at the 10 Commandments. Let's look at them. And then let's look at them relative to religious people and how they behave. So number 1 says, you shall have no other gods before me. Now, obviously, if we're looking in a literal sense, that is like, okay, God's the only God they worship. They're not going to go worship other gods. But in a non-literal sense, it could also be taken that you're not supposed to worship anybody. You're not supposed to worship stars or politicians, perhaps, like maybe a guy named Trump. You're not supposed to walk around with graven images of Donald Trump on your body, right? Or money. I mean, you could interpret one to say you're not supposed to value anything more than their God, which if you look at a lot of Christians, man, they put a real high value on money and they definitely engage in star worship. They do. Okay, 2. Now, this goes to the graven images, the idea of creating idols. It'd be really interesting because I don't know if Christ on a cross would be considered an idol. It might, but you're not supposed to make any idols. You're not supposed to make any symbols of worship. Okay, now this one, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. This one gets abused all over the place, bro. Like across the board, up, down, and sideways. Now, remember the Sabbath to keep it holy. Now, this one, too, gets rolled. I find this one particularly ironic because football is a zone where a lot of people profess to be deeply Christian and they're deeply religious. They're always thanking God for their wins and for the blessings of their athletic bodies. But dude, they literally play football every Sunday, boss. The Sabbath is technically Saturday. Yeah, but is the Sabbath Saturday? I mean, it is in Judaism. But is it in America? Because Americans go to church on Sunday. So what's going on with that? Because it's either on Saturday and nobody goes to church that day and nobody recognizes it. They all go on vacation and go get drunk. Or it's on Sunday and they're all watching football and getting hammered. They're not honoring it either way. Honor your father and mother. That one seems fair, but I imagine honor your father and your mother. Somebody like Donald Trump's kids, what are they going to do in that situation where their father is banging all these other women? You shall not murder. Now, this would include war, police, right? It doesn't say you shall not murder unless you are committing war in the army. It just says you shall not murder. Now, here's a big one. Number 7, you shall not commit adultery. Now, every Christian Republican I know practically has committed adultery, and many of the Democrats too. This one's big. Thou shalt not steal, pretty obvious, but then it gets into a gray area, like, you know, when corporations are stealing from their employees, like wage theft. What's that all about? Who's taking responsibility for that? You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Now, this one is about gossiping and not telling lies about your neighbors. But, dude, 9 is like on fire, bro. Half of America is burning in hell right now because of number 9. And, of course, number 10, you shall not covet. You're not supposed to be jealous. But jealousy and envy are pretty much operative mechanisms in American society. So what's interesting about this is how these are the big things they want to put on the wall in schools in Louisiana. But the very leaders that are passing these laws aren't even obeying this. The guy they're going to vote for president breaks half of these before he eats breakfast. That's sort of the fakery of religion. They want to figure out what is and isn't allowed in their Bible, but the entire religion is just one giant coercive mechanism in order to draw power to a governing authority and to try to draw power over social structure. Okay, but none of it is actually obeyed in any of the strict sense. There's not a Christian on the planet who obeys every tenet that's espoused in that Bible. Every group of Christians will pick and choose which elements of that Bible are the important ones to follow. And then as a unified group, they tend to lean towards one or the other around gay rights and abortion, which is never mentioned in the Bible. And there's obviously a ton of stuff in the Bible that's no longer prevalent. And there's some hideous in there too, like slavery was endorsed by the Bible. It's pretty wild that Louisiana here is going for broke with these 10 commandments.
Today we fulfill our promise to bring drastic reform to our educational system and bring common sense back to our classroom. A strong education system leads to a strong economy.
Now, one thing I would like to point out here, though, is this, guys. You ready? Let's look at the Louisiana demographics real quick. Louisiana has a huge black population, FYI. Huge. It's a beautiful state. I've spent a fair amount of time there. Love New Orleans. I've played in Monroe, which is a small town up here, Monroe, Louisiana. And I also played in New Orleans. And I've driven this state like north to south from New Orleans, which is down here. This is Lake Pontchartrain. I've driven this state numerous times. Their education is terrible. They're at the bottom of everything. If you really look at Louisiana, their rankings, they're literally at the bottom of everything. And part of that is because they have a very high level of people of color, and the government is all white, and they just sort of allow the people of color to live in hideous conditions. So it's like 30%, all right, 50% white, 30% black, okay? 30% black. Now, one of the things we have to notice here, and this guy, he's given his little speech. This is Governor Landry's education plan. Now, pay very close attention, guys. All right, because this is really important. This is Governor Landry's big, dream big Louisiana announcing this whole thing, his big education plan. But look at this. Do you see a single black person in this room? You do not. You do not see one. Okay? Dream big Louisiana. Louisiana is 1/3 black. In theory, this room should be 1/3 of these people should be black. If it were to be representative at all of the actual population of Louisiana. But here he is. He's going through and he's shaking hands, and they're going to announce this 10 commandments thing. But he's in a room that doesn't even represent the state he resides in. And this is a huge part of Louisiana's problem, is 1/3 of that state is black, and a huge portion of them are in poverty. And the white people in government in Louisiana, they don't give a... They don't care. They let the poor people of color in that state just flounder and wither, and they don't do anything for them. And in fact, they actively do things like when Obamacare came out, not wanting to expand Medicaid to help poor people of color have access to health care.
Drastic reform to our educational system and bring common sense back to our classroom. A strong education system
Lafayette
leads to a strong economy and a strong state. This bill mandates the display of the 10 commandments in every classroom in public, elementary, secondary, and post-education schools in the state of Louisiana.
Now again, all white people. All right, all white people right here doing this thing. Now, the thing that's really interesting and harmful about this is the direct link between Christianity and white supremacy in America. They are hand in hand, okay? The slavery, that was a huge part of the Louisiana economy 159 years ago, was Christianity approved. You need to take note of this. Like, how can this guy be governing for the entire state of Louisiana, and yet at his event, there's not a single person of color? Not one. Watch her, dude.
Education schools in the state of Louisiana.
Oh, dude. He just keeps going. Girl down. Dude, that's so bad, bro. I hope she's okay. But if there wasn't a more fitting example, I think that's about one of the most fitting things I've seen, dude. That is what God thought of this move.
If you want to respect the rule of law, you got to start from the original lawgiver.
Yeah, well, actually, you don't there, Mr. Landry, because if you're not a Christian, that God he's talking about is not the lawgiver. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a Christian. God has no agency over me. I just find this stuff super discouraging because I support people's rights to be able to go to church and wear their crosses and worship their God and pray 20 hours a day if they want, man. If they want to bang their Bibles all day and night long, I support that. And not only that, but I want them to have union jobs, livable wages, free access to education, and healthcare. I want them to be well taken care of. I want them to be able to own property. However, what is very problematic to me is when somebody has a belief system of the Bible or whatever, and they have their 10 commandments or the laws that exist in the Bible, and then they come and say, hey, you guys all need to live by these. My Bible says gay people are bad, so therefore you gay people can't be gay. And it's like, no, see, that's incorrect. If your Bible says gay people are bad, that means that you can choose to not be a gay person. But that doesn't extrapolate across other people. People who don't believe the Bible, none of the in that book matters to us. That book is like Harry Potter to me. It's the exact same thing. I would respect somebody's right to believe Harry Potter was the creation of the universe. And if they wanted to live in an attic somewhere believing that they were a muggle or a wizard or whatever, as long as they're not harming people, they're allowed to live up there and call themselves a wizard. I don't care. I'd even say, good morning, Mr. Wizard, if it makes the guy feel at ease. But that doesn't mean that we're going to live under the laws of Harry Potter. And I'm certainly not going to live under the laws of the Bible. The Bible doesn't govern me. It's going to be an interesting court case. It is. Because, of course, the Louisiana law is breaking the First Amendment. So the ACLU is definitely suing. Now, the problem is going to be, well, what's going to happen when that lawsuit hits the Supreme Court? Because our Supreme Court right now is filled with some very devout Christians. And in theory, they could find some reading of that First Amendment. Like maybe they're going to hone in on the fact that the First Amendment says Congress shall pass no law. And they're going to say, well, this is a state legislature. It's not Congress. Right? I mean, literally, the Supreme Court right now, they had upside down flags hanging. Alito does. Clarence Thomas has taken $4 million from wealthy far-right billionaires. Anything's possible with these guys. They could try to create some sort of legal precedent that is going to entrench Christianity. I mean, we know it's their goal. We know it is the goal of Samuel Alito. We know it's the goal of Amy Coney Barrett. We're pretty sure it's the goal of Brett Kavanaugh, too. That and some beer and some ladies. He wants beer, Bible, and banging. That's it. That's Brett Kavanaugh. He wants you to pay his golf club fees, his country club fees, and get him out of debt. All right, so the legal battle begins.
Start off with is Tia LeBrun, a Louisiana mom and teacher who in 2022 ran for Congress as a Democrat. And Tia, it's great to have you because my mom is a public school teacher. You worked in a classroom for 12 years. And I just wonder how you feel about this new law and if you support it or if you're opposed to it and why.
See, here's part of the problem. I don't know what she's going to go into, but I think part of the problem that in addition to it being anti-First Amendment, the other problem with this is that it's a Band-Aid. It's the same thoughts and prayers sort of deal. 20 people died from gunfire and they're like, oh, I'm going to pray that it gets better. But obviously, these MFers have been praying their entire lives. So if their prayer accomplished anything here on planet Earth would be different. Obviously, their prayer doesn't do shit, okay? It doesn't. If it did, there wouldn't be any school shootings. Prayer is accomplishing nothing. So putting these up on the wall is going to spend a whole bunch of money to make a whole bunch of posters. They're going to put them in there. They're going to go through this whole rigmarole, and it's going to have absolutely zero effect on the actual life of the people in that school. And in fact, that money could probably be better spent on something more worthwhile.
I'm very opposed to it. And it's not anything to do with disliking religion. It's just that there are different religions that exist in our communities. I've taught Jehovah's Witnesses. I've taught Muslim students. I have really great Muslim teacher friends who now have to display Christianity as the accepted or promoted religion in our state.
Well, and I wonder, given that, and talking about the different children with different religions, different teachers with different religions, what the governor was arguing is that it's good for kids to have this up in the classroom.
Dude, it's not good for kids. I hate to say it. The 10 Commandments are useless. They are, bro. They're useless. I mean, even the language, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's ass. Right? What about his wife's ass? Just kidding. They're talking about donkeys. You know what I'm saying? It's like that is useless.
He said in part that it was key to respecting the rule of law. And just as someone who actually spends time in the classroom, you know, teachers see it so differently than anyone else. I wonder what you make of that argument.
I think if a poster could cure what ails schools, that would have been done a long time ago. We all had posters up of rules. Keep your hands and feet to yourself. Respect each other. Be kind. You know, those things are all over the walls already. And somehow we are still 47th in education. And
there you go.
I don't know why they think this is going to be a magic bullet.
Yeah. Alabama, my home state, is not far behind you on that. And just, you know, looking at it through that lens and at the landscape, what are you hearing from other teachers and educators? I mean, is this the kind of bill that they want the governor and legislators in the state to be focused on, or is it other things that
nobody
that
wants this be focused on? Nobody cares about this.
Yeah, I think if they would put in place adequate pay scales and work on our homeowners insurance problem, that would be a much better use of their time.
They have a huge homeowners insurance problem because of hurricanes, because the storms are getting worse and worse in the South.
Focusing on these culture war issues that are maybe trendy nationwide, but they don't make a difference in our life every day. That 10 Commandments poster isn't going to make sure that my kids that I have at the next school I work at are going to go home and have something to eat. So if it doesn't make our lives better in a meaningful way, I don't know what the point is of spending our tax dollars and time on that.
Yeah, well, here's their point. Trying to just control the state classrooms and make them mandating Christianity because they believe that that's what their God is desiring them to do. But you got to wonder, so why are they doing it? Because do they actually believe that just having those words on the wall is going to be some magical osmosis that's going to like filter into the children? Are they that warped that they believe that? Or what is their end game?